Good morning, you spicy chimichangas. It's Jammo rising, and I just watched Napoleon, the new historical epic from one of the great masters of historical epics, Ridley Scott. The dude made Gladiator, okay, enough said, in my correct opinion. And I think we all had high hopes for this one, especially when we learned that the titular role would go to none other than Joaquin Phoenix, one of the finest actors in the world today. But now that I watched the thing, I got some bad news bears. Unfortunately for all of us, but most importantly me, Napoleon falls pretty flat. It has some good points, of course, which we shall elucidate with relative alacrity before delving into the downsides. Before we start getting pissy, that's right, let's front load some of that positivity. As is par for the course with Ridley Scott, the production itself is phenomenal. I spoke about this in depth in my video about Prometheus, but to summarize, Scott's biggest strength as a filmmaker is world building. That could mean the arenas of Rome for Russell Crowe to punch lions in, the cityscapes of Blade Runner that housed Roy Batty and his Tears in Rain, or indeed the alien world of Prometheus, where Guy Pearce hobbles around in goofy old age makeup. No matter the world, past or future, Scott has the production skills to bring it to life. It's usually the best part of his movies, and Napoleon is no exception. The 19th century is brought to life in vivid detail here with gorgeous sets, costumes, music, and cinematography, and unfortunately that's the only real complete positive I can give because everything else I want to talk about is either half and half or more thoroughly negative. But I do want to say, categorically, that it's hard to be angry at a movie made with this much skill and ambition. It takes a great director to create an admirable failure, which I think Napoleon is, and for that reason I can't hate it. This isn't some slop like Rebel Moon, but I digress. Let's get into the negative. First of all, this movie feels way too condensed and way too idly indulgent at the same time. What do I mean by this? Well, it covers the span of Napoleon's entire career, more or less, with years passing in the span of a minute. And yet, at the same time, it lingers for far too long on scenes that I personally found incredibly tedious and distracted from the military career of Napoleon, which was the most interesting element. I mean, maybe this is my bad in terms of expectations, but I really wanted a war movie where we see the brilliance and mistakes of Napoleon as a general. But in actuality, that's about a fourth of the movie, maybe, if I'm being generous, while the rest is devoted to a frankly unengaging look at Napoleon as a person. I never grew to know him over the course of this movie, or to sympathize with him really, and Ridley Scott seems to go out of his way to make the character into a pathetic little cuckboy, essentially, an emotionally stunted man-child with anger issues. Now, I have no personal historical stake in the figure of Napoleon. It's not like you're gonna make me angry by making fun of him, and I know that he has this reputation, but the film just fell flat in this regard. And really, for a film entitled Napoleon, if the character Napoleon is boring to me, which he was, that's a problem. An addendum to this problem of characterization is that the major focus of the film is on Napoleon's relationship with the Vanessa Kirby character, and I didn't particularly like her either. So it was just scene after scene of two unlikable people being assholes to each other, and I was like, why am I watching this again? To be fair, I do actually think this relationship pays off somewhat in the second half, and I have to give props to Vanessa Kirby's performance as the best in the movie. But since their relationship is the central force and linchpin of the whole film, it really needed to have more spark than it did. This is especially problematic because it's the worst element of a movie that shines on the battlefield. Call me a slobbering man baby if you like, but whenever the cannons thunder and the blood flows, this movie wins. There's this amazing snow battle in the second half that is just stunning, with like Mongol ninja soldiers and dudes falling through the ice, and it's so well shot, and I was like, yes, this is what I want from Ridley Scott. But it feels like a tease, and too quickly are we shuttled back to the boring reality of the plot. You know, one thing I couldn't get out of my mind during my viewing was a central question, and I think it's a question anyone needs to ask themselves when writing a character, be it fictional or real, but especially real. Is what we're seeing the most interesting part of this person's life? Now, I know you can make a life-spanning film work. I think a great example would be Malcolm X by Spike Lee, but sometimes you need to focus, like Spielberg did with Lincoln, telling the story of a short span of the man's life in a nuanced and detailed way. And I dare say that Napoleon is trying to do way too much to the point of feeling disjointed. For example, the entire span of his exile to coming back and leading armies again felt like 5 minutes. It gave me whiplash. It's been suggested that this would have worked a lot better as a miniseries, and it's hard to argue with that, but I'm also not sure it's one I would watch. And that, my friends, leads me to my strangest complaint, the one that I didn't think I would have: Joaquin Phoenix. I would not presume to say that this is a bad performance. That would be way too reductive, and I think he's trying to do something interesting here, but it just didn't work for me. If anyone out there has seen Beau is Afraid, the Ari Aster film, it often feels like that sad sack of a character, Beau, was transported to the Napoleonic era and just had a funny hat on. This is not helped by the fact that the accents are all over the place. Some people have a quasi-French accent, some sound British even though they're French, and Joaquin Phoenix just sounds like his American self, just extra whimpery. You know, like Beau. And I just found it comical a lot of the time, and I don't know if that was intentional or not. Like I said, it does seem like the movie wants to make fun of him quite frequently, like showing us how bad he is at sex. But yeah, I was not engaged. I also wonder if the choice not to use full French accents was self-reflexive on Ridley Scott's part, since everyone laughed at the accents in House of Gucci. I have not seen that film, so I can't comment, but I am aware that people were making fun of it, so I'm guessing that was a factor here. And finishing this review was feeling like my Waterloo right now because it's a tough film to summarize. I guess I could put it this way. Whenever a historical battle sequence graced my screen, I leaned forward in my chair, eyes glued. But every other scene, I just wanted to end. It looked good. You know, cool costumes and music, and that Ridley Scott sure knows how to do filmmaking. But as a story and a character study, it was just frustrating and dull. I can also put it this way. Killers of the Flower Moon is 3.5 hours. This movie is 2.5 hours, and yet it felt twice as long. And that's Napoleon! I think the only people I can recommend it to are people like me who would have seen it regardless of criticism. Like, I'm a nerd for this stuff, right? I'm gonna watch the new historical epic from Ridley Scott, even if it gets the stinkiest review scores on earth. That's just who I am. And you already know if that's you too. Everyone else? Nah. Maybe skim through it when it's free on your streaming service just to check out the battles, but that's as far as I'd go. Unfortunate, but hey, the world turns. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to join me on my stupid cinematic adventures. Peace, love, and warfare. And I'll see you nerds in the next one.